In Washington state, money is being taken out of your paycheck right now for the Long-Term Care Trust Act tax. You'll be surprised, though, to find out how much they're going to take and how little you're going to get for it. Thank you for watching. My name is Glenn Morgan, and this is We the Govern. And as always, I start out most of my videos here in Washington State just as a quick trigger warning for those who may not be prepared. We are under eternal emergency here, and Governor Inslee's mandates seem to be changing every week. So, for clarity, to warn anybody who's watching this video that nothing I say here has been approved by Inslee's Ministry of COVID Compliance. And because of that, if you only want to hear what Governor Inslee wants you to hear, you better stop listening now, because I'm sure he doesn't want you to hear this. So let's talk about this. This is really the Washington State Long-Term Care Trust Act. It's actually been in the news for insiders who've been paying attention to Olympia for a little while. But just now, for the most part, people are starting to wake up as they start to look at their paycheck and they realize, wait a second, there's a new tax, money's starting to be taken out. What exactly is this for? And what am I going to get for it? And that's a great question, because essentially this is kind of the dire straits approach to government, which is you get paid a lot, or you have to pay a lot of money and you're not going to get much for it. And so the money for nothing program, that is very common in government. We're used to that, paying a lot and getting very little and very low quality if we get anything at all. This tax really personifies that, and it's kind of a classic example of what's going on, not just in our state, but elsewhere. Now, when we talk about long-term care, this is a serious issue. Anybody that cares about and has had older relatives maybe who in their declining years or final years, sometimes they need a lot more assistance, a lot more help, especially with dementia, or if they have some other disease that's kind of making it very hard for them to get around. And so because that long-term care and kind of that end-of-life care is a big concern, and it's expensive. And if you've ever had to help somebody through that situation or help them with their relatives who are in that situation, that can be a really concerning and trying time. And so people already have kind of plans they build usually into their wills or into their estates, or if they don't have much money, they're going to be planning on using the Medicare system to help in that process. And so that was kind of the origins, at least the theory behind why the Washington state was going to have some kind of a tax like this. And so they came up with this idea, the Washington state's long-term care tax, about collecting cash from everybody and supposedly making sure that you're going to get some services. But of course, this being Washington state, and since this was a Democrat proposal, the idea is to get as much cash as they can and give you as little in the way of services as can be produced. So let's talk about this in a little bit more specific detail. Washington State's long-term care tax came out of the 2019 legislative session, and it was under House Bill 1087, and that was essentially the first legislative session where the Democrats got enough majority from the 2018 election. They felt that they could kind of pass whatever ideas they had without worrying about the narrow margin they had in either house. It was modified slightly in the all-Zoom lockdown COVID session, and they had House Bill 1323 because the original Bill 1087 was so clearly flawed. However, despite that, what has ended up happening is people, to know this bill is to understand just how bad it really is. It is to know it is to hate it. So because of that, there was basically a citizens initiative that got started here. And many people got this in the mail. It's 1436. People want to repeal this tax, or to be more clear, what they really want to do is have the ability to opt out of it. Because right now you don't get any choice. You're stuck with this tax and all of the uselessness that the so-called services are that you're going to get at the end of the day. And so a lot of people want to resist it, and that's why this initiative 1436 has come out, and you've seen this at a lot of events probably if you look around the state. Now let's talk about how much money really are we talking about them taking. And this is where it starts. Every single paycheck for everybody in Washington state, they claim they're going to be starting out taking 58 cents per $100 out of your paycheck. For most people in Washington state, this is probably going to amount to somewhere around the $200 to $500, maybe $600 a year, which doesn't sound like much. But of course, the reality, anybody who's paid any attention to any of these taxes or these dumb ideas that get pushed through, nobody really believes it's going to be at 58 cents. That's just to get through the legislative session initially and to tamp down the resistance that they know is going to be coming as people get more furious about the really poorly written piece of legislation that's produced this tax. Tomorrow it'll be $1.50. Maybe the day after that it's $2.50, $3.50, $5.50, $10. Who knows? There's really no limit. The law certainly doesn't provide a limit, and it'll just get continually just escalating as the incompetence and the uselessness of this bill and the implementation of it becomes more and more obvious. And of course, there was only one little narrow window of opportunity to opt out of it, and if you're watching this video, it's too late for you. That window is closed, and under this law, you have no way to opt out of it now. So everybody's stuck, just like in the Hotel California. You can check in, but you're not going to be able to check out. So let's talk about exactly what goods and services you get for having such an awesome law in the books and paying all that money out of your paycheck as you move forward. Well, the answer is going to be, if you retire in the next 10 years, you get nothing, because you're required to pay at least 10 years into this program before you get the first penny. So there's anybody who thinks that they were going to get help with their long-term care and they're getting ready to retire in the next 10 years, tough luck for you, you get nothing. If you move out of the state, no matter how much you paid into this program, of course it's not portable because government doesn't do anything that's easy or makes sense. You get nothing. This is just about collecting cash from you until they can force you to leave, and then, sucker, you're done. You don't get any of that money or service. It just gets wasted and flushed down the drain along with the rest of your tax dollars. Or if inflation continues, you get almost nothing because, of course, the good and service that they're planning to give you at the end of this is a fixed amount. And so as inflation seems to be continuing, anybody watching this video and paying attention to current times realizes inflation is a real thing. You're not going to get anything because the fixed amount that you get that's promised you in this piece of legislation just gets worth less and less as time goes by. And of course, finally, if you've been able to be here for at least 10 years, never leave the state, and you decide you need to use it, you get almost nothing because it is a fixed $100 a day, that's the most that you're going to get per day for 365 days. It doesn't guarantee long-term health care for any length of time beyond that. And if you've paid any attention at all to somebody who's had to actually go into this process, you realize that that's nothing. That's barely enough to cover even a lower cost service for long-term care. It barely is a drop in the bucket for what you really need. And so, again, very low quality. But don't worry, you're going to be putting a lot of money into it, and so will a lot of other people, and pretty much nobody gets anything out of it. Now, we all know that it's been used as kind of a Trojan horse excuse for the single-payer system. This is a way to kind of get that camel's nose under the tent so that they can start to expand it, collect a lot more money out of your paycheck, and probably provide crappy services in whatever expanded service program that they have in the future as well. So, whose infinite brainchild was this? And that's Speaker Lori Jenkins right there. She's the one who currently leads Washington State Legislature, and as a Democrat, she's excited about a program like this. She was able to dig up a retired Republican legislator to support her in this effort, which is why she did this photo session. But when you actually look at who voted on the bill, it was pretty much along partisan lines. The Democrats thought this was a great program, and the Republicans thought it was a bad program, and they generally voted against it. You can see a lot of original effort to try to modify it, and there's been continuous efforts to try to modify it over time. But generally, this bad idea was a very partisan one, and the Democrats were super enthusiastic about it, and the Republicans were opposed to it. Now remember, although Lori Jenkins thinks that everybody who comes into the legislature should have a COVID test, she's very happy that there's no intelligence test for any of the new legislators because if they could do math, they would certainly realize that there's nothing good or useful about this program. But the special interests certainly enjoy it, and it's going to be a great way to kick a lot of cash out to whatever special interests are going to be managing and supporting this program, and their ability to provide any quality service, of course, will be pretty much zero. So the problem is when we deal with legislation like this, just stupid, totally absurd, ridiculous programs that provide minimal value and all they do is just extract cash from you, people say that's a stupid bill, it's a stupid idea. And pretty much everything that was written about this bill, and the more people got to know about it, about this tax, the stupider it became for a larger sub people. I mean, anybody paying attention to it knows that it's bad. Now that they're actually extracting the cash, the declining support for this idea in this piece of legislation is only going to increase at this point. And unfortunately, if you're getting a paycheck in Washington State, you're paying for this stupid idea, and you're not going to get anything out of it. Now, the problem is, well, you can't fix something that's totally stupid. You can vote against those who want to keep trying to hurt you with their stupid legislation. And I think that's something to remember, because this isn't the only dumb idea they're going to have. There's a lot of dumb ideas where this one came from, and this just happens to be one that's directly affecting most people in Washington State. But it also serves as a good illustration for what's coming and what these guys, what these guys right here think is really good ideas. I mean, they're proud of this. They think this is genius. So it's going to be important for you to be aware of it. And I'm going to just kind of close here, again, pointing out the fact that if you want to do something about it now, you'd have to do something like this. You're going to have to sign this and get an initiative on the ballot to try to recall it, this initiative of the legislature, making that kind of an impact. That's something you can do as an average citizen. You can also start to lobby your legislators, again, emphasizing the fact that you would like some level of math literacy associated with any of these ideas that are put on the ballot or put in front of the legislature in the future, and speaking up and pushing back. It's the only thing you can do. Generally, this kind of stuff happens when people aren't paying attention. Although there was a big partisan fight on it in the legislature, it did kind of pass beneath the radar for most citizens of Washington State. So, as we always say here at We the Governed, first I want to encourage you to go to the website, look at some of the background articles. I'll have them linked down below. And don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share this video with others. Encourage them to subscribe as well. But remember, we have to be engaged and involved to make a difference and an impact anywhere. And it starts with you, and it starts with me, and it starts with us reaching out to our neighbors and making sure that we let them know what's going on, because the future ultimately belongs to those who show up.